Good afternoon, good morning, welcome to today's webinar. I'll just turn on the camera and say hello as well. So today is all about organising your catalogue. So basically the plan for today is to go through a strategy of various different imports, some organisational tactics, and then some various bits on backing up as well, but very briefly. But mostly about import strategy, organising, and so on. With regards to sort of interaction between sessions and catalogs, as a few questions came up about that this morning. There was a whole webinar about that a couple of weeks ago, so I probably won't get time to talk in depth about sessions today. But that last webinar, Sessions and Catalogs, actually deals a lot with the interaction of that. Anyway, before I get ahead of myself, before we get started, just in case you don't know who you're listening to, my name's David. I'm part of the software sales team based out of Copenhagen in Denmark. Oh, turn my levels down a bit. Hang on. As usual, we have a maximum of 60 minutes today. We'll probably use all of that actually, because there's quite a lot of things that we can talk about with regards to catalogs. But once you spend time listening and rewatching again, if you wish, then you're going to be in a really good place to know all the special tricks about organising your catalogue. I am going to send you a recording, so don't worry if you don't catch all of it. You're very welcome and encouraged to submit your questions at any time. At the bottom of your GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see the last section is called Questions. Pop your question in there and that will come straight through to me. If you're on iOS or Android, tap the question mark icon on the screen and you can ask a question in the similar way. All right, let's begin. So let's come out of this. And I'm going to start from scratch, basically. So even though we're not going to go in massive detail about making catalogs and all that, this is about organization. But we will start from scratch so you can see a couple of different import strategies. I think, as usual, you can roll your eyes at me. I forgot to turn on my mouse locator. So at times, here it is, you might see the mouse located like so. Okay, I'm going to kill the webcam for now, and then I can pop back later. So let's start with the whole import side of things. So let's say file, I'm going to make a new catalog first of all. So it's as if you were starting from scratch. So let's call this can't type today. Capture, told you I can't type today. Capture one webinar. We get there eventually. Too much coffee. And what we're creating, of course, is the database, which tracks the location of pictures and holds all the metadata and adjustments and so on. Now, by default, this sits in the pictures folder. If you want to put it somewhere else, you can click on this box and choose a location. But I'm just going to leave it as per default in the pictures folder. So let's say OK. Now we have a brand new catalog made. And just to show you what we've made so far, so you know, Capture One webinar, there it is. OK, so couple of different ways to import. I'm going to import from a memory card to simulate if you were coming back from a shoot and wanted to get started. And we'll also import from an existing location, and we move some images around and files and folders and so on. So first of all, just to prove that I'm not lying, we've got our bog standard SD card here, like so. So I'm going to pop that in my reader. And all being well, we should see the import window pop up like so. Okay. So let's kill that camera again. And now we've got our import dialog like so. So now, because I put a memory card in, the import from the source of my pictures is already automatically detected. So the goal is here basically to try and make this process as simple and repeatable as possible so that when you come back to your catalog and you stuff in a memory card, you can just hit import all and not have to worry about anything else. Wouldn't that be nice? So first of all, destination. they're on a memory card, so we want to choose where to put them. Now, hopefully, what you ladies and gentlemen have is some kind of top level folder. Let's call it My Image Archive. Archive, like so. So My Image Archive. So for me, My Image Archive is basically a folder on an external hard drive because my laptop isn't big enough to carry all the images I have. So I have this folder on one external USB drive connected by USB 3 called My Image Archive, and then everything else gets imported into that. Now, as we have this top level My Image Archive, it's going to stay like that in the import to dialog. I never have to adjust this. So I'm going to set this as import folder. You'll see what I mean in a second. And then you'll see underneath we have the subfolder. So we've got a couple of different choices here. So let's just grab one image for now. And let's say we want to manually create the subfolders that the images are going to go into. So for example, this was shot in California. So I just type California. I told you I can't type today. What is wrong with me? California, and it was March 2018, I think. Doesn't matter. But this way I can make a manual subfolder. This one down here we're going to come back to. So right now we're going to ignore all the other things that are under here. All we're doing is focusing on import from, import to, and I've got one image ready to go. So let's say import image. There's my image, nothing particularly stellar about that. And now we can see in the Finder that there's the folder that I manually created. So if you prefer to do it event-based, if you like, so this is California, then maybe I went to, I don't know, art fair or something like that, and then you could load in your different shots based on events. So that's what I do, which is a popular way to do it. Now, if you prefer to automate this in some way, then of course we can use any kind of metadata hook in the image to build these folders for us without you having to think about it. So let's go back and do File, Import Images once more, like so. And this time we're going to import all, but I'll say exclude duplicates. So it's going to find that single duplicate and remove it from the import window. Now, we had a great question this morning, which I didn't even know you could do this, but somebody asked, could I import just say a particular date range? And I thought, nah, I don't think you can do that. But then I looked up here and we have these little orange dots. If we check that, we can actually actively add a search filter like a date range, for example. So I did not know that was possible. See, we're learning all the time together. All right, so we're going to import the rest of these images on my memory card. And this time, instead of manually typing a subfolder, we're going to use a token. Now, to access these tokens, we can click on this box here. And then we have this big list of various different tokens. Now, if you're used to Photo Mechanic, then you'll know these as variables, but it's a similar principle that all these little tokens here, they refer to some aspect of metadata or image capture information or IPTC data. So like down here, you can see ISO, for example. Now I said we want to filter by date, so I can reduce this sort of intimidating list just down to date and time options, like so. So we can see the current date and also the image date in various different formats. So we could do something simple like image date like so. So that will give me folders in this format, hence the sample. On the small arrow here, we could also choose different formats. But if any of those formats don't look so good to you, then we can also mix and match these other tokens. So I'm going to go for image year, and we have 4 like so. Then we want to have image month. So I'm going to go like so. And I'm going to have it words. So 3 M's. So year, month, 2019 Feb. And then we want to have image day, which is this one here. and just DD is fine for me. Now, if you want to, you can divide these up with dashes or underscores or whatever. So like so. So now I've got the date format that I like, 2019 Feb 07. If you wanted to, you could save that as a preset, so you didn't have to create that once more. Let's do that. I'll just call it my date setup. There we go. So that's something I'm never going to have to do again. So let's say OK. And now we are going to import all the rest, like so. So that's going to import. While that is happening, you'll see that we've got the import dialog showing us our progress and also about previews being generated. Now this is quite critical, because what's happening in preview generation is that each image gets a small JPEG preview made of it. Now the size of that preview you can control in Capture One's preferences. I'm leaving this dialog open because I'm going to mention it in a second. Under image, we can see the preview image size here. So mine is set to 2560 pixels, which is fine for my screen. Now, if you had a 4K monitor, you'd want to bump it up to here. If you had a 5K monitor, you'd want to bump it up to here. So this simply means when I'm browsing through images in Capture One, that when I scroll through, we're looking at the preview data. We don't have to access the raw file until I zoom in to 100%, for example. Now I left this up because it was just reminding me that there was a duplicate during import. So just so you know that there was a duplicate, but it was detected because I ticked on the duplicate box, and that was that. So to summarize, what happened in my import? So remember, we've got our master top level here, my image archive. This was the folder I created manually, and these are the folders that were created by the token, the date-based token. Now in the first tool tab, this is where we manage our library. So if I expand these out, then you'll see basically Capture One is showing me we have one image here, 9 in this folder, 7 here, and 7 here, like so. So pretty simple stuff so far. Now, what if I do an import from an existing location? Because it's nice to be able to compare what happens with those. So let's go back to File, Import Images. Let's go and grab a folder of my stuff on an external hard drive. Capture One demo catalog, demonstration images. Let's grab my folder of stuff, like so. And this time, I'm just going to leave them in their current location. So in their current location, basically. So that means they don't get moved or anything like that. They will simply stay where they are, but the catalog will know how to access them. And I'm not going to touch anything here for now. So now if I say import all, away we go. So it's probably be a little bit faster, as you can see. So that was 139 pictures because they're in their current location. So it's just a case of Capture One having to build previews for it. And you see that import was pretty good. Oh, let's get rid of you because we still had that duplicate. All right. So I'm just helping someone out who had a small issue with sound. Alrighty. Okay, so now Capture One is going on and generating previews. The reason why I grabbed more images is just to show you that's a background task. So this, you don't have to wait for this to finish. So if you want to desperately go ahead and look at a shot, I can double click on it and Capture One will then prioritize that preview being made. So I don't think you have to sit here and glumly stare at your preview generation. You can just happily ignore that. All right, so now if we look over here in my library tool, you can see that on Mac HD in this tree, we have these various collections, like so. And on this external HD, we have these collections, like so, or this singular collection. So one final thing for importing is what else could we add to the import process which would save us a little bit of time? And one of those things would be a metadata preset, which we hope is something that we as photographers try and do with each image. So first of all, let's make a sample piece of metadata. So I'm just going to close annotations, keywords, and so on. And now, every time we want to import into my catalog, it would be nice if it had my name, website, all that kind of stuff. So let's actually fill this out on one image. I just have one image selected, just so I can create a template. So it's going to be David Grover, create his job. I'm a part-time photographer, not really. Website, let's go for www.phase1.com, etc. And a city could be any city, and so on. So we fill this out to its completeness as much as we want, and then we could put in the all-important copyright notice, which is Alt-G, I think, copyright David Grover 20, now it's 2019. So we've got some basic metadata. So with the 3 lines here, we can say save user preset, like so. It shows me all the various different things that are going to be included. We would not want to have rating or color tag, for example, because then that's going to apply that rating and color tag to every image. So that's just something to be mindful of. Say save, and we call this David's metadata, like so. Done. So now when we would come to import, let's do file, import images once more. Let's just pick something else. Let's just grab, these are not my images. So Alex, if you're watching, I'm going to ruin your copyright now. So now under adjustments, we could go to user presets and pick up David's metadata, like so. So now when I import these 4 images, like so, and we click on one of them, it has my metadata already included. So that's just a simple thing that you might want to do. Now, if you were going to favor the whole date route, let's just say my image archive, and we had whatever our date token was in here, you can simply leave this set up. So let's actually go here and we can choose my date setup. Say OK, like so. So now all I need to do when I import into my catalog is stuff in my card and press import. All of this I don't have to worry about because my subfolders are going to be created automatically. It's going to my top level and so on and so forth. So that works super nicely. Okay, so again, if we examine what's happened over in our library tab, and for those of you coming from Lightroom, for example, there is no modes, of course, in Lightroom. So we don't have that, if you like, penalty of having to move from library, develop, and so on. You are in a constant state of develop in Capture One, if you like. But you can always go back and manage your library by accessing the first tool tab. Now, if the view that you see here doesn't look like what you have at home, then if you right click, I can say hide the hierarchy. So that will just give me basically the top level. So the storage medium that it's on, for example, Mac HD or Traveler SSD, and then the folders that belong in that. So if you're seeing a view like this and thinking, where on earth is the entire folder tree, then right click and say show folders hierarchy. So just be aware of that. Okay, a couple of questions before we come back to it. Let's see. When import from folder, why can't I check the checkbox erase images after copying? It depends what you're doing here, basically. So this is only card based. So this won't actually be active if you're not importing from a memory card. It's also something I've never dared to eject because if something goes wrong, you want your backup plan, basically. But if they're already on your system, you could just, I would say, import with current location, for example. So let's cancel out of that. Adding keywords on import. Stephen was asking that. The only way to do that, Stephen, is with a preset as you've suggested. Otherwise, once you've done an import, we can see our last imports up here. We could select all, and then you could just go ahead and then start adding keywords. So it's not something you can pick keywords on imports, etc. Okay, and if you want to move catalogs around, it's just like moving a Word document around. Like if you wanted to open this catalog on another hard drive or another, for example, computer, then you can just pick this up and move it wherever you like, because it's just really a document that points to where the images are. So you don't have to do anything clever in that respect. Now, again, for the Lightroom people, another sort of thing you just have to be aware of Capture One is that if you click on My Image Archive, then you can't see everything. But Vim, you can see all images by clicking on the All Images shortcut here as well. So all images will show you all the images regardless of where they are stored. Now, of course, if you want to be able to see, let's see, the combination of those two folders, then it's not possible in Capture One, just so you're aware of that. But there is a way around that when we start to talk about user collections, so hold that thought. Wayne said, do I suggest auto adjust on import? Doesn't actually hurt. Capture One does quite a nice job. And film simulations, Diane was asking, if you're using Fuji cameras, then the film simulation is always active on a Fuji camera. So it will always be imported. So whatever you shot with on the camera will get imported into Capture One. Okie dokie. So last little bit about the collections up here. So these are fixed collections. So you can't change anything here. These are shortcuts. So like I said, all images, we can see the last 10 imports that we made. There's recent captures if you shot tethered to a catalog. Wouldn't recommend it. I would much rather suggest you shoot tethered to a session. Again, watch catalogs versus sessions if you want to know more about that. And the catalog trash if you've deleted an image in the trash. Okay, so organizing, the big thing here. So now some of you will like to organize with files and folders down at system level. My preferred method of doing it is to use user collections, and you'll see why later, because it's way more powerful and easier to organize. But if you like to organize around here, then you can do so. But the golden rule is if you want to say move an image from this folder to this folder with a drag and drop, you just do so. So you drag and drop within Capture One. Equally, if I wanted to move more than one, I could shift select. So I have 3 and then drag these to another folder. You do get a warning message. You can say don't show this again if you wish, but it's often quite nice to know something's going to happen, and then move. So if I move images around like that, then the catalog is updated. Nobody gets hurt. Everything is working great. It's important to remember that a catalog does not monitor the folders that are in it. So it's not constantly watching these different folders. So this is why if you want to move an image or if you want to move a folder, which we'll see in a second, do it within Capture One. Because if you do it outside of Capture One in the Finder or Windows Explorer, then you then have to, if you like, redress that error in Capture One by relocating those images. I'll show you how to do it, but it's really kind of poor workflow and it's giving you extra work. So if you want to move a whole folder, much the same as before, if I grab California and stick it in this one, we can move the entire folder. And just to prove it has moved, if we open up Finder, you can see, where did I put it? In March 2nd, you can see it's in there, California, like so. Equally, if I wanted to move it back out, drag and drop, folder gets moved again. Easy peasy. Now, let's pretend, let's just grab, let's just put a couple more back in California. Of course, all my dates are ruined now, of course. So we've got 3 images in here, number 85, number 87, number 88. Okay, so if we take number 88 and move it to March the 2nd in Finder, then Capture One says, hang on a minute, where's this image gone? It's offline because it's not where I expect it to be. So if we right click, I then have to say locate. So right click on the image and say locate. And now we have to tell Capture One where it is. So where did I put it? I put it in this one here. Number, what did I say it was? 88. There it is. And we say open. So now it goes back to the right position. Here it is. Everything's fine and dandy. But that took way more steps than simply me going drag and drop. So don't do it in Finder or Windows Explorer. Do it in Capture One. It's much easier. It's much faster. And less steps. Same goes for folders. If you moved a folder and you needed to relocate it, you can right click and just say locate. So same principle. There's nothing to stop you also getting a folder from one storage medium and dragging it to another storage medium. Exactly the same thing works as well. Retro says, well, when would you use synchronize or Rito, sorry, when you've made a mistake, basically. So if you wanted to synchronize, so let's say I go to this folder. So by the way, you can right click on anything and say show in Finder or show in Explorer. Let's say I delete the last 2 images like so. Boom, off they go. So now they're shown as offline. So this one is offline, this one is offline. So what I have to do now is right click and say synchronize. And it will say remove 2 missing images from the catalog. Say sync and job done. Once again, that's more steps than simply clicking on an image and saying, can't remember where it is, delete from disk. So if I say delete from disk, there it goes. So there is absolutely no benefit to doing that kind of stuff in Finder or Explorer. You may as well do it in Capture One itself. And no, Stephen, you don't have to locate every image individually. In this case, in a folder, you would. But if you moved an entire folder, then once you locate the folder, all the images in that folder are also located. Okie dokie. All right. Next thing. Just lost my train of thought for a second. It happens when you get to my age. So we've done drag and drop between folders, relocating as well. What about if you want to add a folder? So let's say we want to add an additional folder into my image archive. So first click on it and say plus. See, we're already in my image archive and I can make a new folder. Let's just call it rocks, for example, and we say add, and now I've got a folder called rocks, which if I want to, let's find some rocks, I could drag and drop images into it as well, like so. So you can make other folders aware, or you can make, the catalog aware of other folders. You can also remove them. Finally, the little green dot here means that this hard drive is online. And we're going to come back to that. So it means it's available. So when we get a little bit deeper into user collections, there's actually a really neat trick you can do, especially if you're storing images over a wide variety of folders. Okay. So that covers pretty much the limit of what you can do organization-wise with files and folders. And as I said earlier, that works fine, but it's not my preferred method. Because really, the whole point of having a catalog is to use the power of the database, because the catalog knows all this stuff about your images, metadata, lenses, dates, and so on and so forth. All of that is stored in the database and is quickly accessible as well. So why not use those various different hooks to do some nice, clever organization? There's also the other issue. Let's take this example. I made a folder called rocks here. Let's say I wanted to make a nice collection of rocks that I'd taken around the world. I'm sure we could think of something more interesting. But of course I can do that. I can look in the folders and say, oh, look, there's a nice rock picture. Let's put that in my rocks collection and so on. But now it's gone. It's moved from my original location. Now someone sent me an email. I can't remember who it was or if they're watching. I didn't get a chance to reply. But basically what I think, because I read it very quickly, that they were duplicating their raw file as they did different versions. And other people have duplicated raw files when you think, okay, well, I want the image in my original folder, but I want it in my rocks collection as well, which is kind of suicidal because you're doubling up on the amount of space you need on the hard drive because you're duplicating raw files. Big disaster. Which raw file has the most recent adjustments and so on. So that's really, not a good way to do it. So the amount of organization you can do at system level is very restrictive. So why not go and do some clever stuff in user collections? So what can we do in user collections? So first of all, I'm going to go to my all images collection. So this is every single image that is in the catalog, regardless of where it's stored. And let's look at user collections and click on the plus. And I've got 4 different things that I can make. So the first one is we're going to make a new album. And this is just a simple collection. So let's go for... We're going to make a collection. Helps if you're in the field, David. So let's make a collection which I think is going to be stuff that I want to put on my new website, for example. So we've created a new collection here like so. It's empty, no images in collection. So now I can just simply drag and drop. Okay, this might be nice for my website. Cute lemur, always good. Let's have some Monument Valley stuff and so on. So this is just a simple drag and drop collection which has these images contained in it. Let's also grab, that's not mine. Let's also grab something from here as well, just so we've got images coming from different locations. Now nothing is moved, they just exist in the catalog only if you like, but now it's a nice easy way to see a collection of images together which also stay in their master folders if you like. Now, if you're looking at these images and thinking, you know what, I'm sure I had a better view of this rock here, but I'd really like to see, it in the sequence of shots that I took. So if I right click and say, show in library, not show in finder, show in library, then it takes me straight to the folder it belongs to and highlights that image. And I can see, well, actually, that was the only close-up one I took, but maybe this is a better one. So I'll drag and drop it across like so. So don't forget that is a really useful thing. Right click, show in library, so you know exactly what master folder it belongs in. So there's no real disadvantage to organizing in this way. Well done, Carl, for asking. Is there a keyboard shortcut to add images to a collection? Yes. So any collection, if you right click on it, can become a selects collection. So set as selects collection. It's probably hard to see, but now there's a little arrow or like a tray with an arrow pointing into it. So now this is my selects collection. So if I grab any image and use the keyboard shortcut, which is, there it is, add to selects album, Command J. So that now moves that to the album. So if I go to this one, so we've got 8 in this album and I do Command J, now it's counted up to 9, like so. So that's, now you can kind of put the mouse down if you like. So I can go through, I can think, okay, I like this one, Command J, let's go down, nothing there, which is good. Let's have this one and Command J and so on and so forth. So that's great question, Carl. Thank you for paying attention. That's an easy way. And then if you wanted something else to be the selects collection, you would right click and set that one as the selects collection. Easy. Okay, so that's just a basic album like so. Now, who was it asking? That was Joel. Yes, I keep mentioning Lightroom. That's probably the biggest beast. But there is people hanging on to Aperture. I know. And there's something coming up specifically for the Aperture people, which is the project, which is similar to Aperture, but not identical, but I believe actually a bit better. So we did our basic collection. Let's go back to all images. Now let's have a smart album. Now a smart album, like a smart collection in Aperture or Lightroom, behaves in a very similar way. So this could be something really simple, like only holding images which have 5 stars. So 5-star images. Then we could build our search criteria by hitting plus and then choosing any of the billions of metadata hooks that you want to use. Or you could make your life a bit easier and you could just choose a preset up here. So we've got star presets, color tag presets, and you can save your own presets. So let's just have one which rating must equal 5 stars. So now we got a smart album. You can see the icon is slightly different. It has a little tiny cog. So now if I go through and hit 5 on my keyboard, let's just go and just grab a couple. 5 on my keyboard. Scroll down a bit. For example, let's grab this one. 5 on my keyboard. You get the idea. We can now see this has those 5-star images in it. Easy. Now, of course, if something doesn't match the criteria, if I press 0, boom, away it goes. So this is an easy dynamic way, if you like, of organizing that doesn't require, drag and drop or anything like that. It's just a case of find the image you like, hit the required shortcut, in this case 5 stars, and then that image pops into that album like so. Good question for Charlie. Does it get confusing using folders and user collections? I don't think so. I mean, some people, what you could have, if you wanted to do everything in user collections, you could have one folder here with billions of images in it. But I think the way I do it at home, I have some very basic organization here, just event-based, and then I do more stuff in user collections. So I don't think it's confusing myself. I think it only gives you more options and flexibility. I find what you can do here very restrictive. And I think the Aperture people would agree as well. And good question from point from Hugo. Having all images in one folder makes the OS very slow, which I hadn't considered. So there we go. Okay, so moving on to the various different things. And yes, right now, the smart album here is looking at all images. So this is where it gets exciting if you're an organizational nerd when we look at projects. So now I'm going to make a new project. And we're going to call this, we're going to use the same analogy. We're going to say my new amazing website for 2019. But now we can organize a bit better. So notice the icon looks a bit different again. So it looks like a box, I guess, is the best way to describe it. Now, if I try and drag an image to this, it doesn't go in. So we need something in that project. So if I right click on the project, I'm going to make a new album inside it. And I'm just going to call this all potential images. So all the images which I think might look good on my website. So let's grab this one. Let's have this one. Let's have some more rocks. Bit of steak. And so on. Let's just grab a sequence here. And so on and so forth. Like so. Kind of want a few more than that. So let's just grab top row here. And so on. So now I've got a collection of 11 images. But let's say I want to divide this up a little bit. So right click, new inside. Let's make another album. And this is going to be for the front page. Like so. And I want another album, which is going to be the About Me page, if you like, and so on. So now I can look at all of these and think, well, the About Me page, let's have an angry cat, for example, and blue-tongued, whatever it was. And on the front page, I will kind of want something a bit bigger and impressive, so I'll go with this one, and so on. So this gives me, if you like, a deeper level of organization. Now, where it comes to be clever is the way the smart albums are handled. So if we go into my project, right click and say new smart album, I'm going to make exactly the same smart album. So 5-star images. Preset. Say OK. And here it is. Now, if you forget to set your smart album criteria, you can right click and say edit. Okay, so now if we look in this album, there's only one image. If we look in this 5-star album, there's 4 images. Why is that? Well, essentially, the project box, it's a gatekeeper. So that 5-star images album, this one here, that's only going to search within that project. So if you imagine you rummaging through that box called My New Website, you're only going to pull out the photos that have 5-star images in them. Now, in this project, My New Website, there's only one image that has the criteria of 5 stars. So if I go in and make this one 5-star, 5 on my keyboard, it's going to pop up here like so, but it will also pop into this one because this smart album is looking at the entire catalog because it has no constraint of the project around it. So what I tend to do if I have a smart album sitting out here, I call it brackets globals. Global. So I just, okay, this is looking at my entire catalog. So Stephen said, can you make a collection that only looks at certain folders? Yes, there it is. So this collection is only looking at images inside here. But you could also make smart albums that only look at a certain date range. It could only look at a certain camera model. You know, the sky's the limit, basically. And I'll show you maybe a faster way to create smart albums as well using filters down the bottom. But for now, probably what Charlie is asking is how do you keep your catalog under control as it grows? Well, the best way to do that really is with the group organizer. Now, the other sort of disadvantage of this files and folders is that list gets really long. And of course, it becomes, you know, greater and greater and greater. Someone was saying here they have 140,000 images. This area can get very big. And of course, you can only expand and collapse that system there as it looks. Whereas in user collections, we can do a bit more with groups and be pretty fancy. Incidentally, of course, I'm not limited to having one project. I could make another new project, like my book project. Like so, I could have another new project. Let's just make a few. This could be, let's say we did a shoot for Mercedes or whatever. Mercedes, all my Mercedes shots. And let's just do one more. Family day to the beach or whatever. Just trying to throw in a few different examples. So now, of course, as Charlie says, this could soon get quite unmanageable and long. So now we can use the group organizational item. This is the Marie Kondo tidy up option, basically. It's just a simple folder. So now let's make one called personal work. Like so, and let's make another one called commercial work, like so. So now, okay, my new website, that's commercial, so let's drop it in there. My book project, that's personal. The shoot I did for Mercedes, that's commercial. Family day to the beach, that's personal. New website, oh, that's an old one. Let's just throw that in there as well. So now I've immediately cleaned up like so. If I wanted to, I could make another group and call that Global Smart Albums, like so. So now we could tuck this one in here. Now it's super neat and tidy. So when I come to my catalog, I can say, okay, well, today I'm working on personal work, so let's dig in here. Okay, now I need to, etc., etc. So there's no limit to the amount of these little group folders you can make. Also, if I go into a particular project like my new website, I could right click on this and also add a group. So I could say albums, like so, and then we could tuck all the albums into that if I wanted to. So it really just helps you to, as Charlie quite rightly says, keep this area under control. So you can make a really nice, neat structure here, basically. Why can I not see? A couple of you asked. Let's find one, my new website. Why can I not see the image count on a smart album? It's because of some R&D curiosity that for some reason it doesn't show up here, but you can see it at the top. It's sort of one of those deficiencies would be nice to correct. It's not certainly anything deliberate that we've done. It's just the way it is for whatever reason. I think there was too much of a performance penalty to read these counts. Anyway, you can see it here. You can't see it in the smart album itself. So just to recap, we've got those groups at the top level, and then we've got projects which can contain albums, smart albums, and other groups. Now, who was asking? It was Joel about the Aperture people. Now, I know the project is not identical to Aperture, but it's kind of a bit similar. Can you search for images that are in other catalogs? No. You're only searching for images that are in the currently open catalog, but you can have more than one catalog open at the same time, as you can see. So that is possible. Any of you asking about when can Capture One do this? I'm afraid we can't really comment on future possibilities, but all feedback is always welcome. In terms of looking at aggregate images, by the way, when we click on a project, so the My New Website project, it shows me the aggregate of all images in that project. So that's why I said it, it doesn't happen here, but it shows you the aggregate in a project. So as I said, I find it much more powerful to work in user collections than within the limitations of folders. Edwin, if you want to track incremental changes to a file, the best way to do it, let's say we made a black and white of this one, and we want to have a color, you simply say image, new variant. So this will give us a virtual copy. So now I've got my black and white and my color. It's the same file name. We don't have that issue of duplicating the raw file, which is a big no-no, but we can have as many variants of these images as you like. So now we could change this one and so on. So you should not be copying or duplicating raw files and appending their file name or anything like that. That only leads to disaster. So new variants is the way to go. Okie dokie. So I think we covered all of that stuff. The last thing to look at, let's just collapse that, is to look at filters. So let's say if we go to all images and you'd think, you know what, I'd really love to know, I'll just hide my viewer, out of all these wonderful images, what did I shoot on a particular lens, for example? So you could try and make a smart album, and we would say, okay, my search criteria is camera lens, and it must equal what or contain. Now, the problem is every manufacturer has completely different naming terminology of their lenses or camera models and so on. So let's say, okay, on all these shots, I want to find everything I shot with the Sony 55mm lens. Now, Sony probably is the world record breaker for ridiculously long lens names. Now I've got no idea what this could be. So is it Sony 55 or what? I don't know. So this is not the right way to do it. So if we go and cancel that out, I can now look in the filters tool and actually filter the current collection on screen. And And I say current collection because right now I'm looking at all images. So Capture One's showing me, look, there's 161 that have no rating and there's 5 that are 5-star. If I go to, let's say, this one here, it's showing me, look, there's 11 that are no star and that's it. So the filters tool reflects the currently selected collection. So that's super duper important. So let's say I want to search by lens. Okay, so by lens, I'd scroll down and then I'd first see if I had a category called camera lens. If you don't, you can click on the 3 dots and say show hide filters. So you can see here if I uncheck lens, it disappears. So let's get lens back on. And now I can see, okay, look at all these crazy lens names. Where on earth is the Sony 55? Great lens, very long name. Here it is. So it's the Zeiss Sonar T-Star FE55 f1Z8 brackets SEL55. So there's 66 shot with that lens. So that's all those images shot with that lens. Now, if I want to convert that into a smart album, I can do so. So I can click on these 3 orange dots right here. And you see it's preloaded the correct terminology for me. And all I need to do is say create smart album. So I can call this Sony 55mm lens shots. Like so. So now you see it's popped up here. We can move it to a different position if you felt it was neater, or I could put it in my global smart albums collection. So now this shows me all the shots I took with the Sony 55. Now the nice thing is about smart albums, which is why the catalog's doing the work for you, is that when I import some more images which match that criteria, i.e. shot with the 55, it's going to self-populate. So if you're a bit clever with your smart albums on the kind of stuff that you want to track, then you don't necessarily have to do a lot of manual labor or heavy lifting here. You can let the smart albums self-populate for you. So if I was to import more shots that match that, they're going to come straight in there. So you could be doing, you know, all your 5-star shots of 2018, all your 5-star shots of 2019, anything that had the keyword landscape and was 5 stars. So just remember in your smart albums, so rating equals 5, but we could add another criteria like the date, year, must be whatever 2016 and so on, and then it will filter. See, that collection disappeared because nothing related to it. So I can't remember what year that was, some time ago. Now just to remember, up here where it says match, that means match all of those criterias or any. So if I change it to any, you see the collection pops back up like so. So let's get rid of that one and say okay. So remember, you can always excuse me, create extra subsets to those smart albums. So filters tool, very good for finding images with tricky names. So like, again, camera models, let's have a look here. So not to pick on Sony because no one else is much better, but if we go to all images, you can see we've got, these are the different camera models. Nikon is about the only sensible one. Nikon D750, great, that's what the camera was. But other manufacturers tend to use, if you like, their model names. This is a Panasonic GF1, so DMC and so on. So the filters tool is great for locating things that have these kind of silly metadata terms. Okay, last couple of questions. We're probably very close to running out of time. We are. Frank says, does Capture One slow down as more albums are added? Not really. You might find with a big catalog, when you open it, it takes longer to first, build up power, if you like, because there's certain things that has to happen when you open the catalog. But once it's open, shouldn't really make any difference. Someone was asking about using an iMac. So Bob says he's got a large catalog, photos on an external Thunderbolt drive, using a 27 iMac 5K, which means the previews are large. Good. I mean, the performance there, the problem is with the iMac is that they were equipped with quite a poor GPU, and Capture One likes to use the GPU, but you're trying to drive a 5K display as well. So my advice is, Bob, is if you make a support case and just kind of try and give some metrics on the sort of performance you get, and then we can say, well, that's to be expected for that machine, or no, that's not performing. Let's try and do some things to optimize it, which we can do for sure. Let's see. Do I use multiple catalogs or keep everything in a single one? Again, that's your choice. Some people just have one monster catalog. Other people like to split it up by years. Both are good strategies. Just remember, if you do have one monster catalog, that you want a good backup routine in place. It continuously surprises me how many people don't have a backup routine. So if you don't have a backup routine and your 150,000 catalog is poof, gone, then that's maybe more of a disaster than having 1 year's worth of pictures gone. But if you have a good backup routine, then there really should be no issue with having everything. Okay. So last couple of questions. Let's see. If you delete an image from Capture One, what happens to the image? Well, you've got a choice, Nick. So let's say we want to delete this. We say image. You've got move to catalog trash. So that's get out of jail free in case you made a mistake. And then delete from disk. So if we say delete from disk, you actually get a dialog explaining that. So do you want to only remove it from the catalog, or remove it and delete from disk? I don't actually think it goes, does it go in the bin? Yes, in the bin. But if we say image, move to catalog trash, then we do actually have the ability to think, uh-oh, I didn't mean to delete that. So just drag it back to all images like so, and then it's restored. Last thing, or almost last thing, let's say, okay, we're working on our Traveler SSD like so, and we eject it. So just to show you that this feature does exist in Capture One too. So let's eject this drive. Just to prove it, here it is, unplugged. Great drives, these, by the way, little Samsung T3s and T5s. So now you can see that Traveler SSD has a red line, meaning that it's not accessible anymore. But I can still go into these images. I can still open one up. There's my buddy Zeph, for example. And then we can still make adjustments and so on and so forth. Now, let's say you're working in a user collection, because I've often heard this complaint. Well, if I go to my, if I'm working in user collections, I don't know where anything is. So let's just go to these images. So let's say we're working in a shortcut, or we're working in these images or whatever. If I right click, same trick as before, and say show in library, straight away it's showing me, okay, it's in the folder David Grover, and here's the image. Okay, it's on Traveler SSD. Let me go and get that hard drive and plug it in. As soon as that hard drive mounts, it's now green, and I can go ahead and do what I need to with the image. Now with offline images, I can make edits, adjustments, add metadata, but I can't, for example, export a TIFF file because I don't have the raw data, or I can't do certain or use certain tools like luminosity masking, for example. But there's a lot you can do with offline browsing. Now to back up your catalog, I would hope you have your totally outside of what Capture One can do. I would hope you have your own backup routine. So on Mac, it's very simple. It's just Time Machine. For me, it backs up every hour for 24 hours, then every day, and so on. So there should be never any excuse to lose more than 1 hour's worth of images, worst case scenario, if you like. And I'm sure the same thing exists for PC as well. Now you can also back up the database within Capture One. So all we do is say File, Backup Catalog. It will ask you for a location. The smart thing to do is not put it in the same place as the catalog is, because if that hard drive dies, then you've lost the main catalog and the backup. Not very smart. So you can choose wherever you want to put it by clicking on here and choosing a place for your catalog backups. Then we say backup and it's backed up. It's nice and speedy. If you want to restore, then it's just file restore and it will list all the backups that relate to this catalog with their date and time. So you can always step back if you need to. Also, by default, when you close the catalog, it will prompt you to back it up. It's a good idea to do it because it will also check the health of the catalog, optimize it if necessary as well. So that's also a good situation to do as well. But you should have your own backup routine in place, of course. What I just showed you does not back up images. It's only the catalog. So once again, not images, only the catalog. So it's really important. Jeffrey says, if you make adjustments to offline, does the image update? Well, think about this, Jeffrey. There's no update that needs to take place. So if we open this one back up, Capture One webinar. So here it is. So remember, what we're looking at here is a preview that's stored inside the catalog. And when you make adjustments, we're not actually adjusting the raw data at all. We're just adjusting how you want it to look in Capture One, however that may be. So we're not actually editing the image data at all. It's just like a layer on top. Okay, this image looks great when it has a bit more exposure, contrast, and so on. So even if the image is offline, let's eject it. So this is now offline. I can still go on and adjust. Let's have a bit of clarity, for example. Went a bit dark there, and so on. So it's no different to whether it's offline or not. So as soon as I make that hard drive live again, all that happens is this will disappear. That's it. There's no synchronization needed because the edits are held in the catalog. Okay, I think we are pretty much out of time. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your particular question. There was rather a lot of you, of course. So it's not possible to get to every single question. I just try and answer those that kind of relate to today. But you can always watch the recording. And if you want to reach out for help, don't forget we have our, let's just bring it up on screen. We have our super duper fantastic learning hub. So learn.phase1.com, and then you can just click on the Capture One square like so, which has all kinds of topics. Now, because of a snafu by yours truly, the events page that normally gets updated with upcoming webinars is currently on lockdown because we're doing some web updates in the background. But if you go to the Learning Hub, you can actually see, you can always see the next upcoming webinar. So that's an easy way if you're keen to come back. And also right within Capture One itself, if you go to the Resource Hub, the first box on the right hand side, there it is. My colleague Camilla's updated it already. You can always see what the next webinar is, like so. So don't worry that the events page isn't there. You can always see what's upcoming directly in Capture One or in the Learning Hub. So the Learning Hub has loads of resources to keep you going. Okay, if you do want to come back next week, I think it's next week. Yes, I got the date wrong a couple of weeks ago. Very embarrassing. Next week, February 14th, layers. As I've said before, every tool in Capture One becomes, more awesome as soon as you add layers into the mix, whether that's color edits, color grading, dodging, burning, all kinds of stuff is great to work with layers. So do sign up and come back for that. I'll put the sign up link in the follow-up email, which you'll get roughly this time tomorrow as well. So have a look out for that. So thanks for joining today. I hope it was useful in making super awesome organized catalogs where you can find everything nice and fast. So take care, have a great Thursday night, and see you all soon. Bye now.